Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about basically kind of like advice I would give my younger self. So somebody that was my younger self as in my 18-year-old self or my 16-year-old self, kind of like a bit of both really. Which kind of came from two places really. So one place came from a very close friend of mine who done a blog post, and if you want to read that, I will put the link in the description below. Yeah, she wrote a blog post about crossroads and about sort of like taking that, what's stopping you from that fear and all that sort of stuff, and sort of those unanswered questions and that sort of like fear and all that sort of stuff. So that was one, and the other was a TikTok video which was, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self? Now for me personally, those two things really resonated with me because I've been through a lot. I'm only 28, and to tell you that I've been through a lot is an understatement, because you would think, oh, well, what has she been through? But if you have a look back in my channel, you know that I lost my dad when I was 13, about 12, 13. I've been in the care system. I was in the care system pretty much my entire childhood, and pretty much until I was 18. You know, I was in foster care for a year, and then from that I was placed on a full care order, which was from the age of about 6 or 7 till I was 18 when it finished. So the advice would be to talk, to speak up, to speak to people that you would trust. Yes, the NSPCC have closed, but there are people that you can trust. And I just wish I trusted people more, because like looking back at things now, my 16 plus team worker, if you don't know what that is, they basically are a, how can I describe it? Basically, they're a better version of social services. They are not anything to do with social. They don't have the same sort of. They kind of do have the same sort of strict of, like, you know, they need to see you a certain amount of times a year and all that, but they're not social workers. They're a lot more laid back, and they're a lot more sort of, you know, you can kind of get to know them better because they're going to be around for longer. And because I'd had so many different social workers over the years, and that I'd never really, I'd never really found the sort of chance to really trust people, and so I kept my distance. So I had my PA at 16, which is a personal, I think it stands for personal advisor, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, she came, I had her from 16 up until I was 20 when she left. But I only started, like, I kind of looking back at it now, looking back at how close we are now, like from like those 3 years that I started talking to her, like from my age of about 18, 19, and then 20 when she left. Like, looking back at it now, I'm like, I wish I'd talked to her more, because, like, yes, I know trust has to be built up and all that sort of stuff, but there is so much that was on my mind back then that I just felt like I couldn't talk to her. So my advice would have been to be, not to be more open, but to be able to trust her more easily, yeah? Because there was a lot of unanswered questions with social services. I didn't know a lot of stuff that was going on, a lot of decisions that were made, and there was a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of fear, and nobody knew that. Like, I don't know whether they actually did, or whether I thought I was good at hiding it and no one actually knew. Like, so for example, it's not really an example, but this is how I thought when I was younger. So from the age of about, I want to say about 14, I think it's probably after my dad died actually, so I would have been younger. I was scared about going back into foster care. Now, I didn't know that this was never going to happen. No one actually sat down with me and said, look, you are not going anywhere. This is in place now. You are at home with your mum, blah blah blah. This is this. This is how it's gonna stay. But nobody did that. Now I don't know whether that's because I didn't share my fears with them, because I didn't feel like I could trust them, because they kind of have a track record of not being that trustworthy. So I was bullied in primary school, and I don't know who found out actually, but I remember them mentioning it in my LAC review. And a LAC review is basically looked after children's review. Um, they have it every 6 months. It's statutory. It's very boring, basically. um, but yeah, that was one of the main things that I wish I would have told my younger self. If I could go back and change things up, that would be the one thing that would change up. I would say to trust your PA, trust that you can tell her things, trust that you can talk to her, because the simple fact is you can, because she was the one person, like, looking back at it now, she was genuinely there for me, and I didn't trust her because I didn't know that she wasn't, well, I didn't know how long she was going to be around for. I didn't know that in the long run that she was genuinely going to be there until I was about 20. There was a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of fear around going back into care and what was going to happen next, because a lot of decisions were already made for me, and nobody really answered them, and to the point where I got to 18 and I still had these unanswered questions. But at that point it was just like, well, what's the point? It was like, well, who even cares now? I'm 18. Nobody cares. Still have these questions that are unanswered, but it's too late. It's too late for me to find out. It's too late for people to really acknowledge my thoughts and my feelings and my wishes and what I wanted and all that, because I'm now older. Now I'm classed as an adult. But I had a lot of issues. I had a lot of struggles. But because I had that lack of trust, and because I'm very much because of social services, because I've grown up in social services, I learned to keep myself guarded. I learned from a very young age, don't say fuck all, don't talk about what's going on, don't talk about what's going on at home, just keep everything inside. Like, I just felt like I couldn't talk to anyone because I didn't know if I could trust them. And that was like the major fault for me. I think getting older was like being so guarded. I couldn't open up to my PA. I couldn't tell her that, I felt stupid by telling her that I got on with her. Like, I felt stupid by saying that, yeah, it took me 2 years to really to really build up that trust. When in fact it could have taken a couple of months. But the simple fact is I couldn't trust her. And that is down to growing up in the social services, growing up with all that, and, not having my questions answered. And, having that fear of, at 16, like, it's mad to think, looking back at it now, like, it's mad to think that I was still scared of growing up at 16. Like, they say you've got your whole life ahead of you once you leave school. I had no clue what I wanted to do when I left school. But things were still the same. Things hadn't really changed much since I was a kid. I would still have my LAC reviews. I would still have my pet meetings and all that in school. And I felt like nothing was changing. But I did nothing about it to really, I guess, change it up for myself. And that's where, this sort of advice comes in, really, to my younger self, which would be, well, what do you want to change? What is stopping you? What is their fear? I wish I would have told, somebody about, how I was feeling, what was going on inside my head and all that. But I just wrote it down, kept it to myself. There's a lot of I guess there's a lot of, I think it's down to like unanswered questions and a lot of not knowing what's going to happen next with the social services. There's just a lot that went on, like growing up, that, you know, it was kind of like, oh, we're doing this because of blah blah blah. This is what has to happen. Like, it was kind of like, well, we're gonna do this, this, and this because this is what it says to do. You know, you have to go to this place for a lack review because it's part of your you know, it's part of the system. You have to go to this, you have to go to that. But then whenever I didn't go to something, whenever I didn't go to my lack review and I didn't go to my pet meetings, it would be questioned. But then for my older sister not to go to them, it was a different kettle of fish. So if I didn't go to my pet meetings and if I didn't go to my reviews, I would get questioned. And then whenever my sister never went, she would never get questioned. They sort of just like left it alone. But the advice I would give my 18-year-old self would be pretty much the same, just to trust certain people more. Like, the fact that it took me until I was 18 to build up a relationship with my PA, who I'd had since I was 16, is ridiculous. To really talk about my experience and all that, and not to feel stupid or anything like that, because I didn't know anyone was going to listen to me. They'd never listened to me before, so why would they start now? You know, I'd expressed when I was younger that I didn't want counselling. I didn't want to talk to anyone about what was going on with, you know, how I was dealing with the grief and all that sort of stuff of my dad passing. I wasn't ready to talk about it, but it was pushed on me by school and by social services, and it never got anywhere. And this is why I feel like as I've gotten older, there was still that fear, because a lot of things were pushed on me and I wasn't ready to talk. But as I was older, I was ready to talk. But then it was like, but who do I talk to? Who do I go to? Yes, I could have gone to my PA, but at the time, I didn't know that. I didn't know that I could trust her in that way. But there are so many different things that kids growing up in the system don't know. And I feel like this is what I want to change, is my experiences of not feeling like I've been listened to, of just having that fear of not being able to express my own fear, because I didn't know that. Basically, it's kind of like, I'm having trouble explaining what I want to say, basically, because it's like so much that I want to get out, but I haven't really thought about it. Like, I've thought about it, but then it's kind of like, I want to sort of like be sort of as I am. There's a lot that I wish I would have said when I was younger. Like, I wish I would have talked to my PA when I was younger. I wish I would have, you know, done whatever I wanted to do, instead of being led by what school wanted me to do and being led by other people, what their suggestions were. And just not followed, like being like a sheep and not really followed the crowd, but followed what was expected of me and what was sort of like what they thought I was going to be like, when in reality that's kind of like made me more guarded, where I should have been more open as at a younger age. I should have been more open. I should have been able to be more open with my PA, because there was that security there with her. There's a lot of, like I said before, there's a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of stuff that I didn't know, stuff that I wanted answers to, and there wasn't a lot, not a lot of it was really given to me. So I kept myself to myself, and that's how I've been since. You know, there's a ton, like when I met my PA, I think I was about 15, because my sister's older than me by a year, so we ended up having the same PA, but I I think I was about 14, 15 when I met her. No, it would have been 15. About 14 going on 15 when I met her. And I didn't know that what a PA was. I had no idea what the 16 plus team even was back then. You know, I didn't know that they were, you know, their job was basically to listen to their young people and to sort of encourage them to do whatever they wanted to do, not what social services thought they should be doing or anything like that. There's a lot that I didn't know that I know now, and it's frustrating at the fact that I had this fear. I had a fear of going back into foster care. I had this fear of just telling people my dreams and that. Like, I used to dream about my dad, and when he would come home and all that sort of stuff, and I didn't want to be looked at like I was weird, or like I didn't know what I was talking about, but because that was just my dream. Like, I lost my dad at such a young age, but I never felt like I had anyone to talk to about it. I had no one I could really trust to talk about the fact that, you know, I was having dreams about him and I didn't know what it meant and all that sort of stuff. But then at 18, our local NSPCC closed, and I went up to see my PA just to talk about that, really. And from there, we sort of built up a relationship. But the fact that it took me that long to really talk to her and get something like that off my chest it's just mind-boggling. So my advice to my 18-year-old self and to my 16-year-old self would have been to trust your PA. She is there for you. She is a fucking amazing woman. Yes, I'm swearing, but get over it. She's one of the most kindest people you'll ever meet. She thinks she introduced you to certain music and all this, but she can be trusted. Don't listen to what social services have got to say, because they don't know you. Like, they don't know you properly. All they know is what is written about you. Don't think that nobody wants to listen to you, because they do. You just have to choose the right people to talk to. Once you have your PA, talk to your PA. You know, talk about stuff that, you know, that you're scared about. Talk to her about your feelings, what's going on inside your head. Because in the long run, you turn out like me, like a dickhead. Well, not like a dickhead, but I'm so fucking guarded. I hate talking about things. Like, I hate talking about my past. I hate talking about I don't mind talking about the care system, as long as it's not about my experience. Because I don't know how to open up to people. Because I always feel like, well, they don't want to listen to what I've got to say. I will always listen to people with whatever they want and whatever's going on with them, but then I won't share with them, because the initial thought is always, they're not going to listen to me. They're not going to want to know what I've got to say. You know, I'm not that interesting. That's how social services made me feel, because let's see, my very last review at 17, I was almost 18 at this point. My very last review, we'd just done the This Way Up DVD, and we showed it, and my reviewing officer couldn't care less. And it just goes to show that even if they have like a set agenda and you change it up, they don't want to know. And that's what really wound me up. And looking back now, I just brushed it off like it was nothing, you know, because that's how I felt my whole life of growing up in the social services system, in social services and the social care system, because of everything, because of not being listened to, because of having so many different social workers. I couldn't feel like I could trust my own PA, who had from 16 up until I was 20, almost 21. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm sorry if I rambled, but I really wanted to get this off my chest, and I'm very sorry for swearing, but that's just me. I do swear a lot. But there's a lot that I could talk about that really frustrates me with the social services and within that sort of like realm of that social care system and all that. But that's for another video, I guess. But if you like this, leave me a comment on what I should talk about more, whether it's to do with social services or anything like that. Let me know. Okay, bye guys.